Hi everybody, Bryan Ballreich with Roland DGA in Irvine, California. Here again, and today we are going to cover a topic about special color plate generation. It's a feature within VersaWorks 6. It's extremely useful for any of us who have a Roland device that includes any of our specialty colors. That would be white ink, gloss ink, primer. This feature allows us to actually generate on the fly some of the components of those spot colors without having to put them in the design that you've loaded to be printed. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'll explain, or I'll demonstrate what I'm speaking of here. So I've got the VersaWorks running, VersaWorks 6. I've got several devices loaded here. We've got a VG2 with orange ink, we've got a VG2 with white, and then we've got an LEF 300 that has white, gloss, and primer. So let's first just look at the VG2 with white. So we bring in any job, and right away I want to highlight something that you're going to see over in the mid column about midway down, and it's a line item here. It's called special items, and if you look over to the right, this job has a special item. It's been picked up by the RIP, and it's a normal cut. So just to give you the key to this, special cut simply means it found in that design one of the reserved colors for cutting. In this case, it's the cut contour spot name, and there was a line designated with it that was saved in the file. When you brought that file in, it goes through it and it will show you this special item icon and the floating letter A, and if you hover, you'll see normal cut. That is the indication that that reserved color was picked up. It's now ready to go. So by double clicking this job, we're going to open it up and take a look, and I'm just going to grow it up on the screen a bit, and you'll see these red moving line segments, and that is the visual verification that our RIP uses to show you these are cut lines. These will not print. These are strictly going to be used now for cutting. So that was picked up automatically. It found that file, it had that reserved color, and it's working. So let's take that back to normal, say OK. So there's that indication. There's normal cut has been picked up. Let's pick another file here. Okay, so again, this is the VG2 that I have that has white ink as a spot color in its ability. And sure enough, this file came in, and if you go to the special items and you take a look, there's the WH. That is our white ink designation as a special item that has been picked up by the RIP. So let's go ahead and double click, and it comes up on the screen. I'm going to grow it so it fits on the screen. Well, you'll notice I don't see any kind of visual verification at this point, but what we have to do is we have to change our media type to a media that accepts white ink. Easiest and quickest would be our clear PET film, and then when you go down, and you notice still there's no visual verification yet. We have picked the right machine. I know this machine has white, but we do need to now change the next item, which is the mode, and I'll have it just produce white ink only. And lo and behold, you'll now see the screen has changed radically. It got rid of the print data that it saw that was not white ink, and it's showing, and because I've only selected white ink to print, it's only showing you what it saw in the file that was reserved for white ink printing. And now I'll change this once again, and I'll say I want white and color, and boom. This is the job as it's meant to be run. So this was originally done for a silver film, so bright chrome appearance, reflective. With this job printing, it does a beautiful underlay of white. You'll see here that's the mode I've got selected, where white occurs first. That'll be the lowest layer, and then the color will lay on top of the white, and you'll get this beautiful design. So there you go. So there's another job that uses a spot color. We have the right machine. It has the white ink. We brought the file in. It encompasses a spot color specific for white use, and it's ready to go. So we'll say OK, and we'll go jump back out. Let's pick another one. Let's go third down on the list, and we've got the same auto shop that we had before, but something's changed. Take a look, special items. We've got normal cut, and right next to it, a perforated cut. So this job has both. Let's take a look, double click the job. Let's grow this up to fit the screen. Let's change this to a regular vinyl, and let's change the print only to print and cut, and boom. So we take a look at the visual verification I have on the right side. We've got print data. We've got the moving red line segments. That indicates normal cutting. That's where the knife goes down, stays down, creates the cut, and when it completes the total path right back to the beginning, lifts and moves to the next cut. That's just a normal cut. That is designated, remember, by the spot color reserve name that we use called cut contour, all one word, 2 capital C's. Then something different on the outer edge, you'll see a rounded corner box that is a moving line segment of gray color. That is our visual verification for a perf cut. So the reserve color name for that is perf cut contour, all one word, 2 capital C's and a capital P at the front. So as long as the spot color is named that and it's designated as a spot color and saved in within the job, it'll come in and it'll be this gray moving line segment. Very good. So moving right along, we've got those down, and now we're going to take a look at what to do when you bring a job in and you look over to the right and you see special items is empty. There's no white, there's no other special colors, there's nothing to be done. It's just CMYK data with no cuts, nothing else. Okay? So we've got this ability in the RIP. So I'm going to double click that job. I'm going to open it up. There it is on the screen. I'm going to go over to the left. Now I'm working with the BG2 with white ink. So let's just say, you know, this has worked great. The client loved everything printing on white vinyl. They really, that was the job originally, but now they've called you up and said, hey, is there any way that you could create this on a clear vinyl for us? Okay, well, the only issue there is we need some opacity to that color on a clear so that it's not see-through color. We need to block it up, and the best way to do that is to put a white behind it. So taking a look here, I'm going to change this to a clear film. Still have it set up as CMYK, but now I'm going to say white and CMYK. But note, the RIP hasn't automatically generated anything. As a matter of fact, there's still no white because I don't see any visual verification. This is where we get to invoke this ability. So let's take a look in the left column. Let's go all the way down and hover, and you'll see this should show up again. There it is, special color. So click on special color. Right at the top you'll see generate special color plate. Now since, if you look back up to that other quality settings dialog, you'll see that I have it already set as white in CMYK. So when I've done that and I go to the special color plate generation next and turn it on, it automatically knows. It's like, oh, he wanted white. So sure enough, white's been turned on, and you'll see these hash marks showing up that are mixed with the color. Well, that's the white. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening. So it's generated the white ink wherever it found print color. So very simply, where there is the existence of color printing data, it has now been back with white. And the way that's controlled is right here. Generated pattern is for print area. And we can also now say, instead of that, we can say outside the print area. So everywhere else, not where the ink currently sits for CMYK, but on the outer side. If you wanted it, you could do that. And lastly, the entire image. This is very useful because I want to highlight something real quick. Since this job has some text elements that are designated as pure white, the RIP will not recognize those as an area to fill with white ink. Makes sense. It assumes if those are already white, why would you print white? So just so you know, The only way that we can fill all of it, including the white zone, is to say entire image. And notice now that the red hash goes all the way through, including everything that was designated pure white. Now the other way to handle this, if you go back to print area only and you want white to occur within this area, you really do need to open up this artwork and create a duplicate of this job, and or if you want, take the white detail, that is the white text, and what I've done before is very simply designate it as not absolutely pure white. Give it just a one kick up from 0 for one of the CMYK colors. Pick yellow because it's the lightest tone of any of the colors, and take yellow and kick it up to just a level of from 0 to 1. It's infinitesimal, the amount of ink that would be laid down anyhow, so theoretically you wouldn't see it. But the RIP no longer sees it as pure white, and when you bring it in, this will fill in accordingly, even using print area where it didn't before. So that's a quick tip. Next down, we have the ability to control density. Just as you'd imagine, this simply controls how much total ink of white to put behind everything else. It will not change how the color's printed, but it has total control over the density of the ink of white. So let's continue down here. Our next ability to control is, sure enough, we only have a white ink machine, so the only thing we can choose here is the white ink is being generated with this tool. What's below this is another really valuable and powerful editing tool. We can change, if we wish, the offset of the horizontal and the vertical location of where the white occurs. So this is important for machinery only because that it's very difficult to maintain absolute precision of where white ink and color ink will occur. If for any reason that there's a discrepancy of mechanics on the machine, maybe it hasn't been calibrated in a long time, and very simply you don't have time. The calibrations can be done, no problem, but they take time. Let's say you just don't have time. You can do a quick test, and when you click on test, you'll see a chart shows up. This chart will actually get printed. So prior to actually printing your job, it'll print this. You'll use these patterns to visually verify which of the 3 line segments intersect at the best point, where they're not offset at all. And you very simply choose which number corresponds to where they intersect closely enough so it looks like it's a contiguous, complete line. And you'll enter these values, and it will make that correction. So we have that for horizontal position, we have it for vertical position, and last but not least, we have another control, and that is the ability to change the scale, the size of the white ink channel that's being generated. This is fantastic, and we use this all the time at the office. So very simply, ink as it flows and gets thrown down onto the object. Inks can sometimes have different what we call grow rates, where as the ink sits it may expand. It very simply, the ink doesn't sit perfectly where it's supposed to. It'll start to move away from the original location and create a bleed, where all of a sudden, as you look at this logo, theoretically what should happen is white should be exactly underneath every item. Well, we've got some items here that are pretty small, especially this little circle R that's next to the Roland logo. And depending on what size we're going to print this at, it can get even smaller, to the point where it's extremely small. Well, that becomes problematic because, again, where we want this ink to land, we don't want to actually see any white on its own creeping out from under the color. We want it to be kind of invisible, just it's underneath with the color laying on top. So white we want it to actually be a little bit inside the color. The way to do that, just go to size correction, and you'll see here as I click the down arrow, I usually give it a -5, which is 0.006 inch. We call it a choke. It's a term in the industry. We're bringing that location of the white at the boundary, only at the boundaries of every object, and we're bringing it in slightly. Guess what? White has now disappeared. Don't do it too much, because if you go too far, the white creeps in so far that now you've got a transparent outline of the color ink alone without any white behind it. What you want is just enough so that white disappears from any edge and doesn't go too far in that you leave the color sitting on its own. So this is a fantastic tool. Again, we use it all the time. So I'll click OK, and that job's been set up. Last but not least, I want to jump to a different machine real quick. This is one of our UV printers, and the beauty of using a UV printer are these spot colors that we get to add to our printing. It's a lot of fun. I'll never forget when we first had the UV series join our lineup and how exciting it was to have gloss, which is just a clear ink that we can use to spray down and create underlayment of a texture, let's say, and we can then build it on top of each other, keep laying the same ink over the same location, and actually create a doming effect that gives you this beautiful clear dome of gloss appearance that sits right over your ink and only where you want it. So a very powerful combination of inks that we have with this UV line. If you look over now to the right, I want to call your attention again to special items, where we now see three. We have white ink showing up, we have GL, which is gloss ink, and we have PR, which is our primer ink. So real quick, primer is a just as it sounds, it primes. We're preparing the surface for adhesion and more ink. So in this case, these wood coasters, the wood that happens to be used on these is extremely oily. Lots of oil in this wood. If we just printed the UV ink on its own, it has a tendency to not hold. It just can't create a good bond because there's too much oil. Beautiful part. If your design has a primer element, which this one does clearly, we have a liquid, again, it's a primer. It gets sprayed first. So I will go ahead and show you that real quick. I'll open up this wood coaster design. What I would do is just go down to the quality settings, and instead of media type generic, I'm just going to say primer. This is when we want to control just the primer itself. And if you look, we've got our different quality settings, and you look over to the right, visual verification that it sees primer in the design, and it shows up just as we see here. So with that selected, we'll say OK. That would lay down the primer first, and then I'd come back, select the job again, and very simply just change it from primer up here to generic. And now we can do, let's say, white and CMYK. And you'll notice right away, you'll see some areas fill in the design that are now that hatching of red. That indicates a white ink, and I'll show that to you a little clearer. If I just tell it I only want to print with white as the mode, this is where white will occur. Now this is already in the design. So again, I need to highlight that. Let's go back out. Say OK. This design, within it already, the designer made very specific callouts and created objects that he wants to print white. Okay, we're not automatically generating anything with this yet. We haven't chosen to do any of the automatic special color plate generation. So it's just with what's already in it. And it's got white, it's got gloss, and it's got primer. So let's just take a look real quick. I'm going to open it up again. And this time, instead of generic, which would give us access to the colored inks and the white, I'm going to move it now to special effects. Special effects is where we have the control over the gloss ink. And notice right away our only selections under mode. Color's gone, white ink's gone. It's just having to do with the gloss ink. And we have the options of a gloss varnish. That's a really fairly quick one hit, and it leaves just a really nice gloss appearance wherever wherever that gloss is designed. And as you can see from this visual verification of blue, it's only over line segments of the snake logo. So clearly the designer is calling that out. He wants it to pop and look different from everything else. So that's a great way to do it. You just simply throw some gloss ink on that. It'll really catch your eye, especially with any reflection you have in the room. So next down, you've got matte varnish. So instead of those line segments now getting printed and left with a really gloss appearance, it has a matte finish. Next one down after that is the same matte finish again, but with a tighter dot density. And last but not least is embossing. This is where things get really fun. Try to imagine all these line segments sitting right on top of the design, right? Now I'm going to go down to, if I remember, it is, there we go. It is under Use Custom Settings under General. So here we're at the wrench icon on the left. Carry over to the right. We're going to use Custom Settings and Overprint. This is where I can control how many hits of the gloss ink on these areas do I want to create. If it's just one, it's going to be fairly flat. You wouldn't be able to feel it. It's just for visual. You'd see a gloss hit right where those lines occur. Start kicking it up. 2 overpass, 3 overpass, 4 overpass. By the way, don't forget, every time I'm increasing this, they're going to take more time. It's going to go over and over and over, however many times I select, all the way up to 15. 15 is uncommon because it's so thick. We actually use that almost only for ADA signage, where we're trying to mimic Braille, be able to feel it and to be able to read it with the America with Disabilities Act. Regardless, changing this is just the number of passes on top. So again, you start building up the ink, you start creating a dome effect where it gets taller and tactile. You'll feel it. And we've created some incredible designs that have artwork where you've called out only specific parts of the design, and you build up your gloss ink and you get this amazing effect where it's not only visual, it's textural. You move it into the light and you can see physically that it's no longer a flat print. It's actually got depth. So, fun stuff. But again, last but not least, I want to call out the fact that we go back to any one of these, especially the white, and we go to any one of these jobs. Let's take this one where the white has already been in the job. Remember, it's showing up. It's in the design. We're not generating it automatically, but I still have control. So looking at the controls we have, let's go all the way down to special color again, and go to where it says special color white. Notice that these are still active. I can change the horizontal, the vertical, and the size. So again, you have to give it to the VersaWorks creators. This ability is really key. Having that ability to even just change the size accordingly of the white on its own is so amazing. We use it all the time in the office. So there you have it. Spot color, special colored plate generation, all of those different controls, all within the ready to go. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.